Okay, sorry about that. I'd gotten a text message and had to step out of the office.
The
So let's go
Moon,
ahead and check
at
this one out.
times distinguished as Luna, it is Earth's only moon and the fifth largest satellite in our galaxy. It is unique in that it is not captured by its planet's gravitational pull, but formed from the broken fragments of an asteroid collision about 4.5 billion years ago. The Moon is roughly a quarter of the size of Earth. This makes it proportionally the largest moon in our galaxy. To give a better sense of scale, the United
Okay,
States would stretch
I'm
almost
just watching
halfway
through
across the
this
surface of the Moon.
to get some ideas about it.
It is commonly thought that the Moon is divided into a light and a dark
Okay,
side.
so
This misconception is a result
let
of the
me open
Moon's
up
tidally locked
the video
state,
version
meaning
as
that its
well, so we can
rotation
be
is
watching
in
that.
sync with ours,
Um,
causing only one side to be
The
visible
Moon.
from Earth. At
so
times distinguished as Luna, it is Earth's own.
I think that in terms of framing, your framing's looking okay. I think you can tighten it up a little bit, and so let's do a pass just talking about framing first.
The Moon.
So this
At
one's not
times
bad framing
distinguished
wise. I
as
feel like
Luna.
it starts a little early. So I think as much as I know you're trying to probably squeeze it in an amount of time, it needs like some opening time, right? It's like we just immediately snap into the Earth, pulling away, and we get the moon here. And I feel like you could really kind of play with the scale and timing of like just give us a few seconds to stare at the moon or to stare at Earth before we see the moon kind of pop out from it, right? But overall,
Luna.
like, your framing's
It
pretty
is
good
Earth's
here.
only moon and the fifth largest satellite in
Now
our
the fact that the
galaxy.
moon is swimming around and the stars are staying in place implies that the camera's not moving, the moon's moving. And since the moon is moving, it kind of seems
It
like
is
it's
unique.
moving in an unrealistic fashion. And I thought what you were going for in this first shot,
The
first
Moon.
shot, is kind of
At
a
times
realistic shot. So I feel like if you're going for realism, first this moon feels a little big, um, and that distance is um, not probably accurate from the actual distance of the moon. Um, Moon scale to Earth. I guess it's the right size. Um, yeah, that's what I thought. So this is a view image. This is kind of the scale of the moon's distance to Earth. So if this is the moon here, this is how close it actually is to Earth, and that's I think the appropriate scale and size as well. So it feels like it's a little close. If you're going for realism, I'd make it just a little bit smaller and then have us get closer to it as we zoom in on it. So again, but
distinguished as
overall, the
Luna,
framing
it is
on
Earth's
like you're
only
keeping it
moon
in the
and the
right area,
fifth
and that's
largest
good.
satellite in our
Um,
galaxy.
I'll come back to
It
some of
is
the motion
unique in
stuff.
that it is not captured by its planet.
This one wasn't interesting to me. I feel like all of this motion is happening a little low. I'd rather have a little happen a little closer to like up here. Um, when we first played this one through and this light came on over here, I thought he had actually turned on a light on the other side of the other side of the room, because this lights up the entire room and really dulls down your contrast here. So this was very like I didn't even pay any attention to this. I just looked over here at whatever this giant explosion was over here. So consider toning that down a little bit. Um,
Planet's
or whether that
gravitational
really
pull,
needs to even
but
be
formed
there.
from the broken fragments of an.
In terms of like what we're really trying to show is that the moon is we're talking about this collision. So the sun in this one shot, because it draws so much attention, feels like it's
The
too much. You
Moon.
may want to put it in here somewhere. Maybe you have
At
it like
times distinguished
somewhere
as
over
Luna,
here, and like
it
then
is
it kind of
Earth's
fades
only
away
moon
as we
and the
sort of
fifth
focus in on the
largest
moon. I don't
satellite
know.
in our
Maybe you're just
galaxy.
wanting to show the sun, but we're not
It is
particularly
unique in that it is not
that
captured
close to
by
the
its
sun anyway.
planet's
So
gravitational
I think
pull,
that feels a little attention getting for without much payoff on that.
but formed from the broken
So the next
fragments
thing
of
I
an
notice,
asteroid collision about
framing wise,
4.5 billion years ago.
let's see.
The moon is roughly a quarter of the
I
size of Earth.
this one's one that I feel like, it comes in from the bottom, but the moon stays like down here for or the Earth stays down here for a long time before it gets over here to the right area. So it just feels like it's kind of staying a little low.
This makes it
And then we kind of
proportionally
approach
the largest
the
moon
bottom
in
of
our
this a little
galaxy.
too
To give
too
a better
tightly as
sense
well.
of scale,
I also
the,
think
Uni-
I hate
the
that this
moon.
always rewinds it.
the moon,
So
at times
the only other thing I would say is,
distinguished as
and
Luna,
we'll get to that in a minute
it
here,
is Earth's only
is it
moon
feels like
and the fifth largest
those
satellite
moons
in our
are,
galaxy.
when you stack them up, they're not going
It is
sort of
unique
straight
in
up
that
and
it is
down
not
in the
captured by its
perspective of
planet's
our
gravitational
world.
pull,
It's kind of
but
going
formed
off
from
in
the
this
broken
angle,
fragments
right?
of an asteroid
And so
collision
if you think of this as the
about
center, when we
4.5
have
billion
that
years
square
ago.
shape, that the moon should be
The moon
growing
is
toward
roughly
the
a
center.
quarter of the size of Earth.
So
This
they
makes
kind of
it
go in that direction,
proportionally the
and they
largest
should be
moon in
probably
our
headed
galaxy.
straight toward this center
To
point
give
up
a
here.
better sense of scale, the United
This one
States
is
would
kind
stretch
of-
almost halfway across the surface
This one's good, but I think again we're kind of kissing the bottom there, and so I think I would give it just a touch of breathing room. But framing wise, you're not bad on
surface
this
of the
one.
moon. It is commonly thought that
So that's kind of a weird cut to me, because we cut from one image of the moon being exactly in the center, or exactly in that spot, to another image of it just spinning. And so
the moon is divided into a light and a dark side.
and this is where she said it's commonly thought that the moon is divided into a light and a dark side. And all we're really seeing is the moon rotating. So I'm not really sure that this is giving us that information. And so what you may think is a way to show that like misconception, like what people may think about that, like that there's like a line around the moon here, right? And this is the dark side, and this is the light side, right? You may want to show it that way, and be, like, that's what people think. Instead, we're just kind of getting the moon rotating.
This misconception is
And
a
then again, we
result
kind of cut again to this perfect like moon right in the center, or perfect sphere in the center. So it's kind of like we're just swapping out what circle is in the center of our view here. So play around a little bit with the composition of that. I'm not really sure the previous shot was necessary. You may be able to just hold on or just fade back out of the one with the map on it of America. Fade that map back out and just sort of look at the moon there for a little bit and have both of them rotating. It may not need that extra shot.
result
So
of the
this
moon's
one,
tidally locked
We
state,
get
meaning that
moon,
it's
like really getting too close here. And so what we really want is you probably want to play with the focal length. So what happens is as the moon comes around here, it goes in front of the Earth. And so maybe when the moon's back here, it's kind of small, but as it comes in front of the Earth, it's a little bit bigger, right? And so you're getting this arc that goes a little bit more like, that's not what I wanted, more like this, right? So it's going behind it, or maybe even more like this, if you can see that. So yeah, the arc would go maybe a little bit more like this, go behind the Earth here, and it gets bigger in the front, right, but smaller in the back. Like, I feel like that's what you're going for, but because we're using such a far away lens, the moon kind of stays the same size for the most part throughout this whole thing, and it ends up having kind of a weird trajectory on the screen
and
after
its rotation is in sync with ours, causing only
yeah, 'cause it's
one
almost
side to be
getting bigger at the
visible
top.
from Earth.
So I think you need to exaggerate the stretch.
The moon is the only celestial body humans have
Okay, so we
physically
know what
visited.
sort of the issue with this is. We've talked about this in the previous videos, and that if we can take the camera, and as you can see here, take this camera and just kind of tilt it back a little bit, and widen the focal length, then we're going to get a little bit more of an exaggerated view. So maybe let's see what 20 looks like, right? And so if we had an angle of view at 20 and we're kind of looking upward a little bit, then instead of this mountain range pointing straight up, it's kind of going to be pointing a little bit inward, right? And so I don't know why it's all flickery like that, but so that may be what's a way that you can kind of fake some of that to get some of that bubbling out of the bottom here, because what you're really going for is for it to feel like this, or maybe even bump up just a little bit more in the center right here, right, to give that rounded shape. Um, but I'm guessing you're using like a 50 millimeter lens or something that's a little bit closer to natural, and so that's why we're getting that rounded shape. A lot of this would have been something we could have treated earlier if you would have just tested it in the dome before presenting it, the dome tester. So let's keep watching.
Visited. We first set foot on its surface in 1969, the last time being in 1972.
Okay. So that was the first pass too, just talking about framing. Because I
The
feel
moon,
like this has two other major
at
problems. The
times
framing is a small
distinguished as
thing, and so I
Luna,
probably spent too much time
is Earth's
on that
only moon.
specifically. The other major problem on this one is just the render quality is just not that great. I mean, like, so on some of them, I think you're
moon and
going
the fifth largest
for a more figurative approach, and I think that's what you were going for with
of the size of Earth.
the
This
crash and
makes
with these
it
shots, and I think
just
that's all
halfway
right.
across the surface of the moon
Where's the one where
of
it
an
breaks up?
asteroid
Yeah,
collision.
this one. So I
but
think that this
formed
is
from the
all
broken
right to show it
fragments
this
of an
way.
asteroid collision
Although I think
about
you could still probably
4.5
play around with it a
years
little bit more.
ago.
And this glowing light
The
off the
moon-
side makes it feel like you're trying to make it feel more realistic. So instead of having that, like, just
Fragments of
having
an
like, I'm trying to think of another way of rendering this just so you can show that this is supposed to be more cartoony. Because I don't want you to have to try to figure out the particles and all that, because I think that you got a lot of shots to do here. So rendering wise, that one's alright, but all the rest of these feel like you haven't really given a lot of attention to the actual visual style of your renders. So, like, if I just Google images of, Earth renders, let's see what I get here. Like, I get a whole page of stuff that looks pretty good. We get this, we get this, and in fact, this is actually a tutorial video that I think somebody posted on the network of like how to make it look like this. Even this is feeling a little more realistic, and since you showcase the Earth so much, it just really feels like it needs more attention. Because right now it's feeling a little bit like, I'm trying to see like, it's feeling a little bit more like this, or it's just feeling figurative. And so I think like it's feeling like this, right? And so I think what we need is something that really, like, for at least that first shot, you need to be able to pull off something that, render-wise or display-wise for the animation just feels a little bit more like we're actually looking at a render of what it would really look like in space, And when you talked about it, I expected what you were going for was something like this, or when you pitched it at least, or maybe even something like this. Like, these are all big, or possibly this with the moon being here instead of the sun. And so I think that it really just needs that extra level of attention on what the render should look like. I know rendering is not like necessarily what I want the focus of this project to be, but rendering is sort of pulling away from the animation. And so like this just feels like you've just thrown a bump map on it and cranked it up too high. And so it needs a little bit more work on just like how is the fall off of light on the moon, like how is the like how like this just doesn't look like the moon that I see when I look up in the sky. And so it's very easy to Google the moon and just kind of start playing around with the materials until you get something that feels a little closer, and this just feels like you successfully got the bump map on there and then kind of stopped. So it needs a little bit more attention on that. The other thing that this one really kind of suffers from is you just have a lot of motion that still feels like it's in the blocking
Largest satellite in our
stages. Like it just
galaxy.
doesn't see, like the moon just stopped. Like It
It
just,
is unique
it's,
in that it
let's
is
go ahead
not
and rewind it here and start.
the moon.
So like everything's spinning around.
At times
Again, the sky's
distinguished
not
as
moving.
Luna,
So
it
I just
is
feel like
Earth's only
the moons
moon
are
and
swimming
the
and stuff.
fifth largest
And then it just
satellite in our galaxy.
dunk, like it just hits a wall. And like
It
we
is
worked with a
unique
graph
in that
editor,
it
so I
is
know
not captured
we
by
can do
its
better than that. You
planet's
got a hitch
gravitational
there,
pull,
and then for
but
some reason they
formed
all
from the
stop
broken
moving
fragments
and
of an
sort of
asteroid
float
collision
around.
about
Like
4.5
it's just sort of
billion years
thinking
ago.
about the actual motion of
The
this.
moon is roughly a quarter
This
of the
one is a
size
little
of Earth.
less of importance, like the way
This
those
makes
stop,
it
like
proportionally
the way that these moons sort of slow in. That's fine because you're kind of going for a figurative thing. But this one just kind of hits a wall too, so it's almost just like you just didn't look at the graph editor on this one, or maybe you wanted it to hit that wall, but if so, like I don't think that that's working so successfully. So I think just ease in a little bit here, or like I don't know how you want to do that. It just needs a little bit more of attention to how this starts and stops, the actual animation part of it, how it's actually animated.
the largest moon in our galaxy. To give a better sense of scale, the
Again,
United
so we kind of have this planet just sitting here, not doing anything. So we already talked about this. I like the idea of just fading in,
The
like
United
having a really
States would
slow
stretch
turn on
almost
it,
halfway
and then
across the
fading
surface
in
of the moon.
the United States, fading it back out. So instead of popping to this next shot, that's almost the exact same shot with a different render.
Is a result of the moon's
So I think instead of having that, just save that. So this animation at
tidally
first
locked
looks
state,
pretty good, except
meaning
for
that
the
its
angle.
rotation is in
Except
sync.
for some reason, this moon comes to a stop at the end, and I think it's also going a little fast. If I recall, it felt like it was just really flying around there. So reduce the number of times it goes around. Why is this stopping on me? Come on. So I'm guessing that my computer's slowing down here. Let's see. Let's just go to
Asteroid
watch on this one.
collision state,
Yeah,
meaning
so this
that
just
its
was,
rotation
on the screen
is
just
in
felt like it
sync
was
with
flying.
ours,
So I would just
causing
have it
only
just
one
just
side to be
reduce, just
visible
rotate
from
a few
Earth.
times. And I don't
The
know why it
moon
just kinda
is the only
slows to a
celestial
stop there.
body human.
I think this, for the most part, looks all right, with the exception of at the very end of it. Again, the moon just,
Last
the
time
camera
being
just
in
motion just,
1972.
watch it just like, donk. Like, why does it, it just kind of hits a wall there. And so I think we need to just really pay attention to the animation part of it. And so I'm giving you more notes on this one. One, because this is the one that it starts off with. But two is because I think you have some good examples of what everybody is doing that needs some work. So I want everybody to pay attention to that as well, not just, this isn't just directly me giving you notes. This is, tailored at a lot of people. So, okay, let's open up Allie. Allie, you've actually came by and already talked to me about a lot of your notes, but I'm going to give them to you anyway on here, just kind of as a quick set of notes for you. Overall, I think your renders are looking pretty well. Come on. This viewer's getting kind of clunky right now. I think that the file may be a little big. Well, while it's doing that, I'm going to go ahead and open yours up on here. So we kind of already looked at yours, but I'll give them to you just so you have them as a... Maybe I just need to kill this and redo that. Yeah, that seems like the right...
Europa,
Oh, Europa just started something.
the
I heard it.
smallest of the Galilean
the
satellites,
program
has the
response.
biggest
Okay,
potential for answering
goodness. So I need to kill some of those probably. Destroy and process. Okay. So let's see if this plays a little smooth.
one of Earth's major questions about the universe. Are we alone?
Apparently not. Let me go ahead and kill Chrome too. I probably just have too many things open here. Sorry you're having to watch this. Okay.
The best clue lies just beneath Europa's
Okay, so the beginning of it, This is looking good.
Europa,
Again, I wish we could kind of
the
accent
smallest of the
Europa a little
Galilean
bit. Maybe when she says Europa, maybe just have like a sort of sparkle or something. I know it sounds silly, but just kind of like a little bit of a flash on it or something, just to pull our attention to it, especially coinciding with the word
satellites has the
Europa.
biggest potential for answering one of
I think we already talked a little bit about like maybe how to play around with getting this to look a little bit better.
Earth's major questions about the universe. Are we alone? The best clue lies
So
just beneath
this looks really good.
Europa's
I think we
icy
already talked
surface.
about getting your
Water.
text to kind of wrap around here just a little bit more. And so that may just be a little bit of a twist on it.
This undersurface ocean is kept liquid by a
That's looking
process
good.
called tidal heating, the push and pull of gravity caused by its orbital resonance
These look good.
with Jupiter and the moon Ganymede.
I think this could have a little bit of a better texture on it, even if we're showing it from the side. Um, so this is going to sound crazy, but like I almost don't
This
want it
intense
to
gravitational force squeezes and stretches
stay behind us as long as it does. Like I really like it when it gets in front, but I start trying to watch it go around, and so there's a couple of things that you could do. One is not you could have it after it gets to right here, kind of speed up and go through this section a little quicker. That way it comes back around a little earlier, right? That may feel weird if we watch it that way, but you could try that. The other thing is you could scale this down to be where'd that thing go? I don't know what I've done with it. Wait, we'll scale it down to where it just fills up like the bottom half of our screen and we can see it doing the full rotation. Now, I'm not sure how that would work. So, I mean, try around different options with your camera and see what's working well. But I also, you mentioned that the purple doesn't really fade in that well. I would probably amp that up if you want that to read.
Europa, warming the ocean and making it suitable for life.
There it is. So I
Rather
guess
than
what I'm saying is, instead of having it right here in the center, you could just have this whole thing being demonstrated down here, and these moons rotating around this way, and it's pretty much still save the same animation. Or you could play with the idea of having the entire thing happening more like this. That way, it never goes completely out of our side. It just goes like slightly above our heads. Um, you could play with both of those, or it's not bad that it's back there for a little while, but it's like I forget that it's going to come back, so I just instinctually I try to follow it around as it loops around the dome.
drilling
And
through the moon's crust to explore the
this came out really well. I remember thinking that you kind of warped that in a way that worked pretty well.
possibility of life.
The thing that we
Scientists
talked
are
about already
leaning
is
toward
that
NASA's concept of
the idea of having this come from the top to go through the
Europa
geyser
Clipper, which would collect evidence by flying
got a little confusing for us. And I think like I would have it come out of this corner. So imagine, it's kind of, coming out of this sort of this bottom region here, maybe, and kind of going around through here. That's not what I wanted. I wanted that one. Coming out of this bottom region here and kind of traveling along here and then over the horizon, maybe. I don't know. And so when it comes in, it's bigger. We got this like shape that comes down the foreground and then gets smaller as it goes out this way, right? And so it just feels like it's going away from us across this surface now. And I think the other thing, and we talked about this, is just getting this plume of
through the mass of
stuff
water
to look
plumes.
a little bit better. Especially because it feels like it hits the wall and then sort of bounces back in. So I wish we could kind of just keep this like circulating this geyser. There's also a couple other options we can do with particles. So if you want to swing by, we may be able to get something that works a little bit better than that. But yeah, overall, I think this is working a little bit. It kind of, again, this is the center of the dome right here. And so I think what you want it to look like is you probably want it to feel like it's going in this direction, or at least like toward the center, to feel like it's climbing straight up toward climbing straight up the wall. Does that make sense? So right now it feels like it's angled a little bit too much over here. And so just, playing around with that angle a little bit would probably help.
That shoot up through the icy surface. Europa's discovery helped reform the world's
And it
view
ends really
that the
well. I
Earth
think
was the
it's a nice
center of the
bookend to
universe.
the
And
way
with
that this
further
works,
exploration,
or the way this
Europa
whole
may
thing
once again be
pieces together.
revolutionary by proving that we are not alone.
So pretty good pacing on that. Dome tester. So yeah, we've already looked at a lot of these. Levi. I'm gonna let that one load up in the thing while we watch.
Mimas is one of the smallest and innermost of Saturn's major moons. With a surface area of around 500,000 kilometers square, the overall size of Mimas is slightly less than the land area of Spain.
Okay. So this is working pretty well. The first thing I'll notice is like you didn't do the warping on that. You may have not been there that day, but I put the video on the Google Plus page so you can see how to get the warping working correctly.
This
I
makes
like the
Mimas
sort of the
one of the
post effect here, and I
smallest
think that
rounded
that's
astronomical
working
bodies in
pretty
our
well.
solar system.
I would wonder if you
Discovered
could do
in
that in a way that it's not so boxy. Like that we just get this like
in the
square
land
map that's
area
cut
of
out. Or like what if you just had the area of Spain, like what if you could alpha out some of this stuff, just so we don't have this like perfect box and this like fade out the edge there, so it just sort of like the country of Spain just kind of appears on the
Spain. This
map, and
makes
it may
Mimas
take
one
you
of the
a little bit of work
smallest
to actually
rounded
illustrate
astronomical
Spain
bodies
yourself,
in our solar system.
or do like a draw over on top of this that just sort of a stylized Spain. This isn't working very poorly. Like it's actually pretty functional. Like it's not like this is bad, but I think that we could probably do a little bit of work to be able to make this less like here's a square map that just covers up our planet. I'm also a little torn on like I don't know where you got the image, but like that's something we kind of have to credit somebody for the art of. Like this isn't your art that we're using in there, and I guess neither are the textures, but those are kind of public domain things. I kind of liked how these worked,
Herschel.
except for when we were watching them in the dome. Let's see if we can actually see it in the dome now. This dome tester is getting really slow right now for some reason. I've been recording too many of these. Yes, I know. Okay. Sorry about this. Let's try it one more time and see if I can. Anyway, while that's loading up, the thing I notice is like if this is the center of the dome, right? You'll see when it plays that, like this kind of goes around the edge of it, not up toward the center of it. So let's see if the dome tester will actually play it. Let me just kill everything related to Chrome. Did I just kill all Chromes? Okay. Well, this is very frustrating. So sorry about this. Um, so I'll keep. Oh, maybe it's because of the WMV. I bet that's probably
Mimas
what it
is
is.
one of the smallest and
Um,
innermost of Saturn's major moons,
so
with a surface area of around
I think there's some
500,000
motion
kilometers.
stuff. Like it feels like it kind of like our camera is still like moving a little fast when we
With a
fade
surface
there.
area of
It's
around
almost like it stops and
500,000
fades at the very same
kilometers squared.
point. So like I would
The
get us
overall
there and give
size
us a
of
couple minutes
Mimas
to
is
stare at
slightly
it.
less
And maybe
than the
that way you don't
land
even
area
need
of
this shot
Spain.
as a separate
This
shot.
makes Mimas one of the
Um,
smallest rounded.
but what you could do is maybe just fade into this instead, like hold on the previous shot and fade into this. Play around with whether we're going to use that
Astronomical
illustration or
bodies
not,
in our
or if you
solar
want, if you can
system.
come up with a better way of showing this.
Discovered in 1789 by astronomer William Herschel.
So you show William Herschel here, but again, he's going to be kind of if this is the center of the dome, and we're that's going to be upward toward the center of the dome. This kind of wraps around sideways. So I think you need this picture to kind of come in a little bit more like this. Does that make sense? And then it's going to feel like they're both kind of pointed upward toward the center of the dome. Try that out and then try it in the tester and see if that works.
Mimas was named for one of the giants of Greek mythology, the Titans.
So I think that you got a pretty nice like set of information here. You got this Titans illustration, but again, we kind of have three pieces here that you're just fading into other pieces of art while we look at this sphere. And so this is a little bit more motion graphics. I wonder if there's something we could do in here to to give us some.
Who fell in battle with the Olympian gods.
I don't know.
Mimas' most distinct feature is the giant impact crater on its surface, known as the Herschel crater. It measures 140 kilometers wide, almost 1/3 of the moon's diameter.
So I don't know. That's one that I would. I feel like it just needs a little bit more visuals for the audio. Like right now, it's kind of like we're just looking at this sphere spinning in space, and it just needs a little bit more. Now this kind of picks up and is a little bit more interesting. But I remember we got like some crazy distortion
powerful enough to
like it looks like everything's upside down.
As a result, a large gap.
I think we could
created,
almost start with
known
this
as
one.
The Cassini division.
Um,
Mimas is one of the smallest and innermost of Saturn's major
yeah,
moons.
I think we could almost start with that one.
With a surface area
And,
of around
And
500,000
the thing to remember is we talk about this like
disrupt the rings of the planet.
it's disrupting the rings of the planet.
As a result,
And
a
it-
large gap is
like
created.
by the time we zoom out to
known
here,
as the Cassini.
everything right here is behind us. Right, this is like we're looking at this section here. So all of this gap happening here is behind us in the dome, right? So when I think you need this to be in the front so we can actually see this happening in the Cassini division here.
division.
And then it kind of slows to a stop
Mimas
again
is one
for
of the
some reason. So
smallest and
I
innermost
think there's a lot to
of
play with in the
Saturn's major
framing of some
moons.
of these, and I think it
With a
needs a little
surface
bit
area
more
of around
interesting
500,000
information about these
kilometers
moons
squared.
too.
The
Like right now
overall
it's just
size of
just
Mimas
orbiting
is slightly less
and sort of
than the
fading
land
into
area
to
of
pictures, which
Spain.
feels a little bit more like
This makes Mimas one of the
just premiere
smallest
work to me.
rounded astronomical bodies
so I wonder
in
if
our
there's
solar
like something we
system.
can do to show Spain,
Discovered
sort
in
of fading in on the
1789
surface,
by
like Shay does
astronomer
with
William Herschel.
the map.
Mimas was
Um,
named for one of the giants of Greek mythology,
And I would
Titan.
this one may just need a little bit of rethinking. Like you're talking about the history of it, and that it's named after the Titans, and so we're just kind of fading into these pictures while we stare at a still image of the moon, and so we're kind of running low on. I don't know. Again, I don't want to make animation for animation's sake. Like it needs, but it needs something to. I don't know. I don't want to say that. Like I actually think that it's communicating the information pretty well. I just want to make sure that there's enough work
who
in here to
fell in
validate,
battle with the Olympian gods.
the grade.
Mimas' most
Um,
distinct feature
I think the other
is
thing is I would
giant
play a little bit with the render quality here. Like this is rendering a little bit simply, and I think like if we look up Mimas and the images of it, is this what it looks like, or is there like an atmosphere around it? Like, does it need a little bit more detail in there, just a little bit more shading or something on it? It's looking pretty good, but it still feels like it could use a little bit of something else.
Impact
Um,
crater on its
and some of that may just be the way the lighting falls off on it. It doesn't feel like there's very strong lighting in this. Okay, this dome tester thing is still crashing, but I think that it's because it's a WMV. So I'm going to kill that one. Okay. So let's try it one last time with mats. Open.
Phobos, the second moon of Mars, is considered the best studied natural satellite in our solar system, being 7 times
So this
larger
one
than the outer moon
was
Deimos.
actually really kind of
Phobos
neat to
orbits
see.
Mars closer than any other moon orbits its planet, rotating so
Because the way
fast
it
that
sort of
from Mars'
filled up
surface
the whole
it appears to rise.
the whole dome at the beginning. That was kind of neat. I would give it even a little bit of a ring around it to where we're still seeing the edge of the moon. Um, but I kind of liked it. Like I don't want to see it in everybody's, but like it was nice to see that really. It's like the planet rising, and I think it worked well because you had
Phobos, the
Phobos kind
second
of
moon of
passing
Mars,
in
is
front of it,
considered the
and
best
this looks
studied
good. So
natural satellite.
it's really interesting that, like how you played with proportions here. You got us really close to this with this moon kind of in the background, right? And I think the render quality of your moon really helped. So that being said, I think there were some things that didn't work so well. So I think you don't always have to get it this big. I think you could even make this a touch smaller and it would still be pretty effective. And
Satellite
you would
in our
hide
solar
some of
system,
the texturing
being
issues
7
going
times
on there.
larger than
It's
the
not
outer
bad,
moon
but some of the bumping is
Deimos.
feeling a little strong.
Phobos
So that
orbits
looked pretty good. But then we get to this, and we got this, like this ring that is happening here is actually the reflection of the Milky Way that is on the dome outside of it. So there's some object in here that's reflecting, and we can tell that as your
orbits Mars
moon
closer than any
spins,
other moon orbits its planet,
um,
rotating so fast that from Mars'
that you
surface
can see
it
that
appears
those,
to
those
rise and
highlights are actually
set
still staying
twice
in the
each
same
day.
place. So that's definitely a reflection. And so that was unfortunate because I'm sure there was a lot of render time
The moon's
that
most
resulted in
notable
that.
feature is the great crater
I felt like that
Stickney.
one
that
was
was
too
caused
big,
by a
though,
large
and this one is too big. Like we got really big on
Large-
almost all of these shots, and so
Phobos,
works
the
good
second
on this
moon of
first one. The
Mars, is
second one it
considered
just
the
gets
best
too big.
studied natural satellite in our
And so
solar system,
we're losing
being
information
7
because we're not
times
seeing
larger
it because
than
it's
the
so
outer
big.
moon
So we
Deimos.
cut to this next
Phobos orbits Mars
shot
closer
here.
than any other moon orbits
Like,
its planet, rotating.
it's a little too big, and we start getting closer to it. And I don't even see Phobos. It's because it's so big, like Phobos almost orbits outside of it. It's like I have to turn my head to watch that orbit. So I just make this whole thing a little smaller. I just show us this information here and let Phobos orbit it like this, right? And I think that that's going to be a little clearer.
Rotating so fast that from Mars' surface it appears to rise and set twice.
And I think because we're moving the camera so much, I kind of lose track of Phobos. Like it's like swimming all over the place here, and I'm not really sure exactly where it is. Because
Set
it's so
twice
big and
each
because
day.
Phobos is so small.
moon's
So I
most
think you need to
notable
play with
feature
how
is the
Phobos like comes near us. So like if you're doing that rise and fall thing, of course this is on the previous shot again. Like don't move the camera so much so all the stars sort of stay in their position, right? And then if Phobos is orbiting like here in the background, when it comes closer to us, get it a little bit bigger. Like let it come closer to us, and you can play with your camera's lens length too, and that may help. Make it a little bit wider,
is
that way
the
when it
great
comes closer
crater
to us it gets
Stickney
bigger.
that was
This
caused
gets
by
a
a
little
large
too big,
impact that
because
nearly
again this is behind us now, so I would keep it in that range. Let's see here.
nearly shattered Phobos.
So you talk about the crater Stickney, and I assume it's this, right? But I mean, it could be that one, it could be that. I'm assuming. Don't let me assume. Um, like even if it's just like create a some sort of other mask that just has a circle here, right? Like some sort of map that goes on it that just has a circle here, and fade that in on the glow or something. Like, use that to make that area glow. Or you could even do that in post, like just do a highlight there and turn on a glow there for like just a second, like just sort of a little flicker on it. So we just see there's a couple of different things you could do on it. You could actually fade into a different color mask where there's a circle drawn around it and a bunch of arrows pointing to it. And anything that just kind of gives us the information that we need. Like this is just like I didn't realize I was supposed to be looking toward it until all the information is almost passed.
Its orbit around Mars moves
So again, this is reflective. I like this shot, but it gets
1
a
meter
little
closer
too.
every century,
It gets way too
resulting in
big
a
first,
future
and then by the
impact
time
in
the
50
interesting thing
million years
happens,
that could
it
destroy
happens
Phobos,
like
causing it to break off into a
like that's a
planetary
good spot
ring.
to happen, and I actually think it looks good.
Phobos,
But
the
this
second
is something that just drives me nuts, and I can't. Let me see if I can scroll to it. I can't.
Phobos,
And
the
yours has
second
a
moon of
few of these in it, Matt. Is that just actually watch it here so we can see. You have these shots that just stop.
Phobos,
Like the
second moon of
animation
Mars, is considered the
working.
best studied natural satellite in our
Let's see
solar
if it does it
system,
on the moon.
being 7
And the
times
moon
larger
just
than the outer moon, Deimos.
Stops. Like it's like it just hits a wall. And so I know you can use the graph editor. Get in there and make it ease into that.
Phobos orbits Mars closer than any other moon orbits
So
its
this
planet.
one, like, it starts rotating. Like, I feel it start. Like, it just needs to already be rotating at the beginning of it.
Rotating
and
so
then I actually
fast
think
that
it
from
stops,
Mars'
too,
surface
doesn't
it appears to rise and set twice each day. The moon's
Maybe it
most
doesn't.
notable feature
So
is
this
the
one
Great
looks good. The
Crater of
animation on
Stickney
this looks pretty
that
good.
was
You can
caused by a
highlight
large
Stickney
impact
again.
that nearly shattered Phobos. Its orbit around Mars moves
So,
1 meter closer
this
every
one just,
century, resulting
like,
in a
drives me
future
nuts
impact in 50
that
million years that could destroy
It
Phobos,
crashes into the
causing
moon. And then all these pieces kind of just stop right there. Right? They stop moving. Some of these carry on, but like the whole thing should keep moving and sort of wrapping around it kind of slowly, right?
it to break
And
off
then the
into a
moon
planetary ring.
stops. And like that is like, ugh. Like, so maybe you're just kind of getting the brunt of it, but there's several of them that has a lot of those stop and start points. And so those drastically need to be addressed. Those were like dragging yours down like more than one letter grade just by fixing some very small tweaks on the animation. You can really crank this thing. Like this is really close to being awesome. And so I think just tweak some of those tweaks and just really making sure this presents well could like take this one up several notches because you're really close on this. It just needs a little bit more polish. So okay, so I think that's the last one. Let me make sure I got everybody. I know I accidentally skipped Shay earlier. Hey, Kaylin, Shay. Okay, I think this is everybody. So here's the thing. I'm going to tack this on at the end, but you kind of know. We can look at everybody else's and see where everything is missing. The things you need to address, and I will post this as a list. Audio. Everybody needs to address their audio. Everybody needs to address their framing. Everybody needs to make sure that they're actually editing keyframes and tangents. This is an animation class. And then finally, you need to make sure that what you're rendering out looks professional quality. I mean, I know this isn't a lighting and rendering class, but it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, it's you're animating, and your animation has to present well. And if staging and appeal and solid drawing are not all something that we could attribute to how well the objects are rendered or how well the scenes are rendered, then I mean they just are. Those are what we're talking about in those three principles as like how we present this to people. And so lighting and rendering, I'm sorry if it's not your strong suit, it's actually not mine either. I have to make more effort in that area. And so some of the lighting and rendering just really needs work just to kind of make it feel of a professional quality. Okay. So these are the major things that I really want you to address overall, and I will make this a set of notes as well but I just want everybody to be thinking about these things as you're working on them. This is representative of us as a department. So I'm going to go ahead and hit stop now. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll talk to you soon.